academic wing here.
Okay.
Are there places in the curriculum where we wish to direct more student effort in response to perhaps assessments? And how does a budget achieve that? Of course, a budget's a bit of a blunt tool.
Right.
And
that's an important point to not lose sight of.
Yeah, it's a blunt tool.
No, the budget being a blunt tool, because honestly, my best response to all of those questions and concerns begins, and mostly ends with, but certainly begins with staffing.
Yeah.
And so not just having the right numbers of folks, but having high quality staffing. And if I felt differently, if I felt like we needed to better support a math initiative, that would often, the most pressing, the most obvious budget implication of that would be in staffing. And so what I am comfortable with is our ability to make our schedule happen driven by the students' desires and needs. So sometimes their desires are different from their needs.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
And so that's why I put both of those out there.
Yeah.
And I could have said English, I could have said science. What I don't find as a limitation significantly is, or even at all, to be honest with you, is us getting to the place where we want to meet the students' requests through the scheduling process, and not being able to. Having to say, this course, which has great interest in it, can't run because of resource limitations. And I mentioned staffing as that, but in science, sometimes those resource limitations might be equipment or lab opportunities, and we don't have those as issues. And so I don't want folks to feel like because the budget isn't a challenging process, that means we are satisfied with the status quo. What I'm satisfied with is, as I just mentioned here, our abilities to serve the range of students that we have here with the resources we have and in meeting their needs. What I'm happy about, I'll give you an example. We have some remedial support provided through Title I grant money. For many, many, many years, we had a full-time individual who supported that in math, and we still do, Kelly Spalding, and in literacy. The literacy position we lost for budgetary constraints, and that's about having less grant money and deciding to focus that remedial support at the earlier grades as opposed to the high school. Everybody wins when that's done and done well. This year, we had the resources to refill that position. And we didn't have to draw from our budget. We did that with grant money. And it always had been grant money. It's been a Title I position. That certainly served us well by being able to bring that remedial support back to the students. I just picked that as one example of where we look for needs and ways to fill those needs and not necessarily have to draw from the taxpayer's budget.
Just to make sure everybody gets a shot in, one of the things we didn't do the other day, and we talked about it but actually didn't do it, was we now have we had our budget from last year. We had at least some raw indications of what the budget might look like for this year, specifically headcount and a few other ancillaries. But what we didn't do is kind of do a round robin around the table to find out if people have specific issues, things where they're concerned about staffing, either too much, too little, concerned about whether or not our budget, as we've sort of outlined it, is meeting priorities of our board members. And I'm wondering if that's a reasonable thing to ask about. And Deb, do you have any thoughts on this, or should I be? Is this premature to be asking this?
I don't have a problem with it. I wasn't sure where to start, but a couple of things. The governor's targets on things that they're asking us to, he's asked us to do, the paraprofessional issue, the student to teacher to student ratio. I'd like, and also understanding of assessment of the first year, or as much as we have, but half of a year, on the food program that we spent $800 and some odd thousand on budgeted this year. Those are my areas that I would like to see us look at.
David?
Well, two comments. Number one, the longer I sit at this table, the more inclined I am to accept the judgment and wisdom of administration in terms of setting priorities for student education. The other part of it is that when you get to budget, I think it's a little bit late for boards to be establishing policy priorities. And I'm hopeful that one of the things that we'll get out of the program reviews that we'll be doing is some sense of, how we really are trending, and if we're going to shift resources, we may not do it in this budget cycle, but we might possibly do it in the next budget cycle.
Fair enough. Colin?
I think, being sort of the freshman of the budget committee, it's an interesting process. I sat on the board of trustees for Bellows Falls, and we did that budget. Each budget is different. Some of things have been brought to my attention from folks in our community, such as, do we continue to go down the route of just keeping the budget the same and passing it year after year after year, which I'm not opposed to. But the questions that they have asked me is, are there areas of cutting for saving purposes, tax purposes, and such things like that. So it's going to be an interesting process. I'm looking forward to working with administration and understanding the budget at large.
John, you're up.
When we talk about potential cuts, the first question that comes to my mind is what services do we want to cut? It seems to me that from what I know that we're running fairly lean. We have a large demand on our guidance department. We seem to be the leading pack in the state as far as proficiency-based graduation requirements and personalized learning plans. So, what services are we going to cut would be the question that I had. If taxpayers start turning around and saying, "Well, no, look, we want a lower expenditure budget." On the other hand, building's coming up on its 50th anniversary in 2021. Are there one or two projects that we may want to pick to specifically fund to, for presentation on our 50th anniversary? We're kicking a lot of stuff kicking a lot of cans down the road at this point. Does it make sense to keep doing that? Then one of the concerns is I noticed just like with the Wyndham Regional Career Center, the security access there versus what I see here at our main entrance of the school. And are there issues that are there security issues that we're behind the times that we really need to, rather than waiting for grants, do we need to sink our teeth into some specific expenses for school security? Those are my issues.
Steve, I don't know if you had anything in addition to what you've already said.
I simply, a budget is a complex document, and it's hard to see changes that are occurring within pieces of programs and all. Mm-hmm. And such as there are changes, or even when it's staying constant for a specific reason, I feel uninformed. And this budget process helps inform one of where the priorities are for the school. And so as changes are happening, to be able to see them in the budget process. So I would just want administration to point out to us those changes as they're occurring.
Brenda, you're up.
At my first budget meeting actually, pretty much. So I'm observing. I'm interested in some of those dynamics that you brought up about the taxpayers' money coming in to make the budget and the grant money that's available and how that all, comes into play. Never thought so much, but there's administration, and then there's students, and then there's staffing, and then there's all the different programs. So how all that kind of comes out, because usually you just see the end thing, you don't see what goes into it. So it's interesting.
My only comment on this is just that I think that because there's a short window to getting these budgets approved once you're in late November, that one of the things I would like us to do, perhaps at the conclusion of our process, is lay out at least a few guiding principles for the following year's budget, because I think we have a little bit more chance to make sure policy and budgets match up. As David said, I think that once you're at this stage, you've pretty well baked that into the process. All right. Wherever that leads us, I'm wondering if Edie, this is your time to shine here.
Well, Chris did his part, and I went and I plugged in mine, and you've got a really complete budget on the second proposal.
Does everyone have it up? Either have a hard copy or... So, the last couple of budget committee meetings, what I said was stay away from the bottom line. Folks like to go there early on and say, where do we stand with this? Well, that's why I'm going to invite us to start this one, because I think it's promising. I think that we can speak to a number of the topics that were brought up here in the board go-around, but particularly Colin's sense of a need to kind of, you said cut, I'm going to say manage the budget, and make sure that we're working most economically. Right now, in this draft that we're looking at, as we go, we're going to start with the very bottom line there. So remember, the way this works is 2 years prior budget, that was last year's budget, so that's a little misleading. 2 years prior actual, 1 year prior adopted, so that's the budget we're working from right now. 1 year prior actual and encumbered. It's what we either spent already or planning to spend already. Then the next one is the budget we're working on now. The next column over is the budget difference. And then the last one, percent variance. What that 0.01 means is up by 1%. So when Edie says we've got essentially a complete budget, here are the parts, well, they're all in there, but the few parts that are remaining that will need to change, there's really two overall parts. There's the WNESU budget, and there's the Career Center pieces to this.
Correct.
Except for those two parts, what you are looking at are what I would refer to as real proposed numbers. For those other ones, for the WNESU, and for the Career Center, the numbers are in there, they're just level funded.
Right.
But I did have a conversation with Chris this afternoon as we were preparing for this meeting, and the sense is that the WNESU is not going to significantly impact this budget in a negative way. In other words, it's not, doesn't look like it's going up by a lot.
And I know you sent out an email half hour ago, and that's changed a.
That has changed, but I'm going to go back through it. Andy's going to go through it, and I want you to take a look at it.
So, but the point here is that's not going to be a significant hit to our budget. The lines may go up.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you that I don't expect that the Career Center is going to be a significant hit to the budget. So again, what I want to point out to you first of all is that's a pretty well-controlled budget. Until... unless people have specific questions about specific programs, what I've tried to make the point in response to Steve's initial query is I feel very good about where our staffing lies in order to support the needs of the students, whether we're talking academic needs or, as Don pointed out, guidance needs, that we have there are reasons why we are leaders in the areas of proficiency-based instruction and assessment and learning and personalizing the learning. It's because we've got enough of the right people doing enough of the right things to make that happen. We've committed to that, and that's what this budget reflects. Being up 98,198, that may go up an additional amount. But the other thing to keep in mind is we have the opportunity to fold into the revenue side of this budget a surplus that is about that size. Do you recall off the top of your head, Edie? I'm thinking like 125,000 is what we had for a surplus, or we're anticipating.
Right. I think so.
And realize in the budget we're currently working from, we rolled over about 25,000. So at the very beginning of our first board meeting, or budget committee meeting, we talked about setting goals around the tax rate and managing the tax rate, and that isn't in any way, shape, or form strictly about the expense side. In fact, the expense side is not even a dominating side of the tax equation.
I know.
It's important, it plays a key role, but there are other things that play into that. By us being able to roll over a good amount of additional surplus, I don't want to say that it'll completely wipe out that increase, but it will take a significant chunk of any increase away when it comes to now figuring out the tax rate. So that's what I wanted to point out to you at the very beginning of this.
Chris, just as a question, then I see some hands already going up. What is our anticipated head count at this point? Do we have any sort of raw
we're still
census
in
that we're
the 340 to 350 range.
So
We anticipate that it will either stay level or go up a little bit,
okay.
but not significantly in a way that's going to really play games with the numbers, the revenue coming in, or the number of staff that we are supporting. It's either going to be level or up by a little bit.
The only reason I'm asking is because the state has provided some fairly ill-informed guidance about staff to student ratios, and my concern is that we might end up coming up against this advice turning into something that's more of a mandate. And whether
I would be surprised to see them go beyond the advice side of that, but I'll use as an example just for everyone's understanding. As a board and as a school, we made a commitment a couple of years ago to significantly supporting the guidance department and those services to students. I will tell you that probably the general guidance is about 1 to maybe 200 students guidance ratio, and we are well inside of that. But we're well inside of that because we made a conscious choice to do that.
Right.
So it comes back to, again, your questions about programs and what are we doing within the budget to support that. That is something that we've done recently, not this past budget, but the budget before that, to commit ourselves to doing well by proficiency-based instruction and personalizing the instruction, and additionally supporting what are well known to be ever-increasing mental health needs for high school students, not just here in southeastern Vermont, but really nationwide. So we pay attention to those numbers, but we then go ahead and make the decisions that are right for the student body that we're currently serving.
I think I saw a couple hands. Was it just yes?
This is in direct to your question. Is that a couple months ago when Lynn and myself were meeting with Brad James about all these student-teacher ratio numbers, he said with all the work that had been put into that, no one has queried him for that information. He's the only one who has that, and he doesn't anticipate anyone asking for that information. It sounded to me like it was one of those shoot from the hip, we want this information, and once it was compiled, it just went away. There was nothing there. But the student staff ratio that we had, Lynn and I spent our first 3 months working on it. It was pretty close to what the state had, and Brad James was very clear. It's like, nothing's happened with those numbers. He's the only one who has them, and no one's asked him for it. So
It's always struck me as an Alec talking point, and I recognize that, but I also just worry about these things turning into stone quickly. Just Steve?
Yeah, just in a brief review of the budget, of that 98,000 increase, it looks like by far the biggest chunk is our contingency fund under general education, which of course we know is for the upcoming teacher negotiations, and it makes perfect sense that we'll probably be spending some more.
Yeah.
We're not planning on a specific amount, but there are negotiations coming in progress, and so that number is sort of an obvious placeholder. Another thing that stands out, and you've already mentioned, is we have contracted guidance services. I don't know what they are, but they're $10,000 more.
Right.
So there's something you can tell us what they are, but
Sure. I mean, what that is the regular ed side cost of the school-based clinician.
Okay.
And so that's shared, special ed and regular ed.
So it's shared with the WNSU.
That's right.
Okay.
And we look at that as potentially a 50-50 sort of thing. We don't necessarily parse out that resource going, shoot, I need to have another special education student before I can sign you up with a school-based clinician. So we meet that need as it comes up. And so sometimes it'll be more regular ed and less special ed, or vice versa. And that's where that varies a little bit along the way.
Yes, but even just those two items together, everything else is really kind of bumping along fairly level, and then you have those two are 82,098.
Colin?
What is the common practice, like the core, the center of the budget? I mean, this is such a large budget.
Sure. That's an easy answer. Staffing and benefits.
Okay.
That's
it's usually about 85% of any budget is staffing and benefits.
Okay. So the focus of this committee is to, again, review every line, basically?
I mean,
or
that's at the committee's discretion on that. I, at the last meeting, gave out a memo that hit the highlights of what I colloquially refer to as the stuff lines.
Right.
That is what each department is looking for in order to run top-notch programs within their department.
Okay.
They put their requests in. I go through that and compare it to what we've spent in the past. I go through it and compare it to what we are currently spending this year.
Okay.
You know, there are some times where staff will ask for books, and it might be that line seems like it's up by a lot, and yet we budgeted some last year and we still have resources available this year. Well, if it's reasonable that they could use those books this year, I go back to them and say, listen, you've asked for all this in books, but that's for a biology class that's going to run next year, but it'll also run next semester. Maybe we can buy those now, use them now, and then decrease your request for that. That's just a little snapshot of what I do in a line-by-line way with each department.
Okay.
What I then do is, in that memo that I put together, I kind of take the highlights of that and share it with you folks, which I did last time. And so if folks then still want to go through line by line, I'm here at your discretion. But
I mean, again, it was more, and I appreciate everything. That was very valuable to me. I guess my other question was just the common procedure of, like, you know, I mean, what do we...
To be helpful on this, it really...
because I'm new with this
varied
budget,
from year to year. Often we've done sort of a review of sort of the top line numbers, identified the anomalies, usually had some... one more round about things like freshman academy and its cost impact and our AP program, its impact. Decided we liked them both and then moved on, but we always seem to bring it up. But I think that at this point, probably, I'm hoping everybody's done at least a little of the homework and taken at least a cursory dive into the numbers, and if people have identified things that they don't understand, this is that, including the entire thing, because if anybody's new to this process, it looks a little bizarre compared to a normal budget. This is the time to raise your hand and say, I don't understand this thing. There you go.
I
I
don't
wasn't looking at you
I don't know.
specifically, Deb. I just thought.
No, the process. There is I have two things. One, on page 29 of 32, under the food services, I don't recognize any previous use of the WNESU negative balance. It's under 910 food service program. It's $5,000,
Yes.
but there's none previously booked in other years. So I'm just trying to figure out what that is.
That is to cover any negative balances that's for students who end up being unable to pay.
Okay, but in previous years, there's nothing here. So
No.
we never had one before.
We haven't, no?
No.
See, in managing our own food service budget, and I want to emphasize this is not me not caring about the folks that provided the service before, but the dynamic, the interaction, and the flow of money is different. So in order to manage the concern about students overcharging, it was about us working with, let's say, cafe services to have them implement their best approach and procedure to students needing to eat but not having money, and we find ways that we support that, while also sending, notices home to folks about the money that they owe. But in this case, that responsibility is going to be entirely owned within the WNESU and within BFUHS. So it's prudent for us to acknowledge the fact that there's going to be some expense there. So that's why you've never seen it before, but why we see it now.
Right. Okay. But understanding that, and that was what I thought it was. I don't see any negative balance currently in this fiscal year. Is there none?
We haven't done anything with that yet. Yeah, we haven't.
Okay, so students have negative balances right now. They're not being recorded
We haven't.
in here.
No. They're being recorded. We have not had a need to resolve that matter yet. In other words, we don't run right out and pay for.
No. But the money is accumulating over the first 6 months of the school year.
Well, you say first 6 months: September, October, November. I mean,
3
3
months,
months,
yeah.
and not just barely 3 months. So, no, we have not done anything with that. If anyone has a negative balance right now, it's our strong desire and our plan that they're going to pay for that.
Well, I understand that.
So
but in
that's
a
why-
budgetary sense, I would expect that it negatively impacts the books. It would show up in a budget line, which it
Not
does
yet.
not
It's
show
not
up.
officially encumbered yet.
It's
Not
not.
yet.
It's not encumbered.
There's
Yeah, it's
also-
not
And,
something that we.
and it is 6 months. I mean, it's just school's hasn't been in session since
I
September.
got you,
Yeah.
but we've had
It's a fiscal
maybe
year.
3 months of potentially negative balances, and so
So there's that. And my other thing is, my other question is, and I have it every year, is we book and we set a budget up with typically more paraprofessionals than we actually fill the seats of. So the budget is, it's budgeted. Do we use them all every year? Because I always see, there's open positions, and we talk about
well,
those during the course
no.
of the year.
If there are open positions, it's simply because we can't find somebody to fill.
Right, I
them.
know, but the money's budgeted.
Yeah.
So that money, if it doesn't get used, rolls over in.
I mean, that would
To
be
the next
more
year.
of a question for
Yes.
Andy Haas than, but I
That's
can't
in
think-
the SU budget.
Yeah.
Unless we, decide to
Right.
roll it.
Right, no, I understand,
Well,
but it's budgeted even
Right.
if we don't fill all the
That's
positions.
not budgeted in our budget. We budget for essentially 2 paras. We have the person that does our attendance work at the front desk, and we have the person that does our in-school suspension work. So
Okay,
the
so I'm
para-
probably thinking about the
Thinking of
WNESU's
the
budget,
WNESU
which is
budget.
going to be bigger that way than the high
Right.
school's
But
budget.
The majority of the paras are special ed paras, say like 95% easily special
Right.
ed paras, so that falls into the SU budget.
SU budget,
and
okay,
those would be
that's so it's my,
billbacks, yeah.
it doesn't cover it here.
Just a point of information generally, the special ed, which is always the place people look at, and the food service, which is the place people look at, and sort of overall curriculum impact on budget, which people look at, all actually are owned by the SU, which is the SU
Right.
the SU board. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least poke at it and ask the questions. David, you had your hand up. Was I?
When we're done with this conversation, I want to talk about the tech center.
Okay. All right. Is there any other specific dives at points here? Go ahead,
Well,
Don.
going back to what Chris Hodgson said a while back about guidance ratio of 1 to 200, is this the state recommended?
Well, no.
minimum?
It is something like that, and when we're talking numbers, I hesitate to throw out ballpark figures at you. That was a ballpark figure, but it is higher significantly. You would find if we looked that number, and 1 to 200 kind of sticks in my head. Maybe it's on, but let's go with a ballpark figure on that. Our ratio is significantly lower than the recommended. Let's go with that as opposed to the concrete.
Like we
numbers.
have 1 to 150 or something.
What's that?
Like we have 1 to 150.
We
or
have
something.
more like 1 to 115. So
So we're investing more heavily in guidance.
because we
decided-
as a board acknowledged the need for that, and I think we're reaping the benefits of that as well. So.
We,
Social and emotional needs that we're
well,
seeing in school.
we did have a lengthy dive on this at one point. We brought the guidance in, asked what you needed, noted that there was so much social service stuff that people were ending up getting pulled into that there really wasn't bandwidth to get the stuff that people think guidance is for in terms of post-school preparation, and we made a decision at that point to add staff, and I mean that certainly is something we can review even
Well,
here.
the other thing to
but-
keep in mind, though, and honestly, Chris Kibbe was a big proponent of this. There were a lot of expectations placed on high schools through Act 77.
right.
I'm going to kind of toot our own horn here. I think the reason why, when people from the state come in and review what we've got going, and they say, wow, you guys really have this nailed, it's because we devoted the resources to make sure that we do it, and that we do it well, and we do it right. And Chris Kibbe was the one that said, if you just try to do it, when schools just try to shoehorn this into somebody else's responsibility, it never goes well. So,
They end up a lot of times with more out-of-district placement because of the issues continue to compound over the years, and they just, year after year, they pile up. So down the road, you're ended up paying to again go somewhere else out of district. So by providing more of those services at the school level, hopefully it's more of a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach.
Just to let you know that we've done sort of a top of the line assessment, which Chris showed us, which showed us about a 1% change from year to year, and that we're now just doing a deep. There you go. We're doing a bit of a deep dive in terms of the details of the budget to get people clear about things that they're not clear on in terms of sort of the line item level. And if jump in at any point if there's anything you see or wanted to ask about. Don?
I did want to ask about the on the 4 figures over the bottom line, 4
Yep.
figures over from the right. You have a $6,200,000 some odd dollars. That was reflected of the fact that $1 million in special ed costs were assumed by the supervisory
Nope.
union.
Nope.
so you have to
Money
realize
hasn't
that's the budget we are currently spending
Oh,
from.
excuse me.
Money
All right,
So
no, I
again,
just- all right.
it's really misleading where it says 2
Okay.
years prior and 1 year prior. It's 1 year prior to the budget we're working on
Correct.
that this committee is building. That's this year's budget.
Yep.
Okay.
2 years prior to the budget we're working on is last year's budget.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a constantly changing, still working from pot of money.
Kind of
Yep.
ignore that at this point here.
Right.
Yep.
It's good to get this clarified. David, I see your hand up. We're trying to.
Let's talk about tech centers. Okay. There are 15 technical education centers in the state of Vermont. We sent to 2 of them, Wyndham Regional and River Valley Technical Center. River Valley Technical Center is one of 3 independent technical center municipalities in the state of Vermont. And what that means is that we have our own budget, our own board of control, and the voters vote the River Valley Technical Center budget separately from the Union High School budget. If it's approved, it's folded into the Union High School budget. and I'm going to make a couple of points here as I go along. Number one, of those 15 technical education centers in Vermont, working from the most expensive tech center on a tuition basis to the least expensive, River Valley Technical Center is rated number 12 out of 15. When you were talking about how money is raised at technical centers, you need to bear in mind the fact that it's based on what is referred to as a 6-semester rolling average, which means that the average attendance over your 6 most recent semesters, proportionate to the other members of your tech center district's 6-semester rolling average, determines what you're going to spend. And those are some numbers worth bearing in mind, because River Valley Tech Center has an anomaly in the formula. And that anomaly is called Fall Mountain Regional High School in Alston, Ackworth, Langdon, New Hampshire, wherever it is up there, because being an out-of-state sending school, the revenues from Fall Mountain attendance are realized in the same year they send the kids. Fall Mountain can be a real wild card, because a few years ago they were sending 40 kids across the river, and we got down to numbers that have been around 12 to 15, which have had huge impacts on the RVTC budget. And that fact notwithstanding, that budget has been remarkably level for many, many years. I would speculate that part of the reason is because Springfield, which traditionally has been the largest sending school to the River Valley Technical Center, which after all is in Springfield, have been expenditure adverse and frequently have had difficulty passing school budgets, one of the reasons that RVTC became an independent. And there's a kind of an interesting irony here. One of the working parts, Fall Mountain tuition is a big working part, but another big working part when you're talking about what the tech center is going to cost you is that in the last couple of years, Springfield has ratcheted roughly 40 kids out of the tech center. They have created some fairly clever but possibly not impenetrable barriers to letting their kids go to the tech center, because every kid that they manage to keep out of the tech center is another $7,000 in funding that flows into Springfield and not our institution. That will have an impact on what happens with Bellows Falls Union High School tuitions. The other, of course, as I said before, is Fall Mountain. And although Fall Mountain has sent more kids, we can only offer admission to Fall Mountain kids if it's a course that's not taught at Cheshire Technical Center in Keene. I think there are 4 classes they can take at RVTC. And we have concerns that although there certainly is room and the need for it, that Fall Mountain may be, shall we say, sticker adverse if we go from 12 kids to 24 kids and their costs double. Okay, I'm mentioning this now because I want you to understand part of the dynamic. The other one I'm going to throw out, which is simply an aside and a pretty good indication of how we're doing here in terms of guidance with regard to technical education, and that is that River Valley Tech Center runs what's called a pre-tech program, which is freshmen and sophomores. And the largest single sending school to the pre-tech program is Bellows Falls Union High School.
Not to cut you off in all this, but I think the place where this lands for us for tonight, for our internal budget purposes, is I believe that the number in our current budget is effectively a level funded one. Are you?
That's what I'm getting to.
Is your bottom line a belief that this is going to change, and if so, by kind of what sort of raw percentage are you anticipating?
I do not have a raw percentage because there's another moving part here, and that is that in the same respect that I'm ex officio on this budget committee, I'm also ex officio on River Valley Technical Center. Budget Committee. And I just told you a few minutes ago that we're an independent tech center. It's a classic school choice situation. We sink or swim based on the kids that we bring into the school. I am an advocate that after years of level-funded budgets that we need to spend some money on programming.
Up there, you mean?
Yeah, up there. And the number which is floating around right now is $50,000. So you can, now that you have an idea how those formulas are built, you can make a rough calculation of what that $50,000 might impact this school here. And there will be, shall we say, even if we spend the money, a question as to how we spend it. We can throw it into our, what do we call it, industrial arts, electric, plumbing, and welding, where we're turning away Fall Mountain kids, name a quick shot of revenue. Or I am an advocate for investing in the future. We have an instructor in our computer program, whatever it's called, who is now credentialed in this interesting new field called cyber security. And that's where I would favor parking that money, because ain't nobody else in Vermont doing it right now at the technical center level. And I believe very strongly that when you're the first one to open that door, chances are it will attract a crowd. So, having explained how the tech center budget is constructed, I'm telling you that I'm going to be advocating for bumping the bottom line.
Are you thinking about, if I'm hearing this, it sounds like about a $10,000 to $15,000 change from what we already have listed in here.
You have to know what the sixth semester rolling
See, that's
averages
what I was
are
going to
for the
speak
others.
to, and I don't want folks to lose sight of, and David, I think, did a great job of kind of summarizing the dynamics in a career center budget. But
This year
what
we
makes
have-
it most manageable at a sending school place is that sixth semester rolling average.
Yeah,
So despite the fact that Fall Mountain, has a dynamic across the river that is not, that's kind of negatively impacting the monetary side of RVTC, it doesn't necessarily drive wild swings in the budget, because what they get charged is based upon, again, 6 semesters, and so
I get a rolling average. I'm just
Well,
hearing that
Fall Mountain pays right now. There's
Yeah.
no sixth semester rolling
Okay.
average
Yeah.
with Fall Mountain. That's
Right.
why I'm mentioning
I
that.
got you.
So-
But for
but-
our end, we'll be charged based on our
Right.
sixth semester.
I'm just
rolling
trying to cut to the chase here. Sounds like we're anticipating an increase of 50K more or less. At least that's your anticipation, and we're anticipating a greater share assumed by all the Vermont towns, because the New Hampshire towns aren't sending as many kids. So what I'm trying to do is figure out from that whether we should be giving Edie some guidance to increase that number, and if so, by what as a placeholder.
Well, I think got to do the numbers, but my fast math says that the Fall Mountain increase the last couple of years is probably what's offset the Springfield loss the last couple of years.
So do you think, so are we,
Well-
so is this number good or not good?
So
is I
can I
guess
make a
the number.
suggestion? We're approaching December.
Yes.
RVTC generally understands that their budget impacts the sending school's budget.
Right.
I don't know what their timetable is, but historically, we can plug in an extra number if we want, but we're going to get a real number from them potentially before we even come back
Okay.
next time around.
So we're good.
Just like the WNESU needs to wrap up their budget in a timely way
So-
for all of us to factor
right.
that in, RVTC is in the same boat.
All right. Colin, I'm going to hold on to you just for a second, but I will get to you. Edie, any other anomalies that we need to be aware of that, because you had given us some guidance the last time. Are there any surprises that we need
Well,
to be aware of?
the AOE has to give me the 6 semester rolling average.
Was
And
he
right
talking about
now, my understanding is all the AOE's numbers aren't coming out till after December 15th.
All right, so there we are. Colin?
Just real quick, what is the current number of our students that go to either Brattleboro or Springfield?
5 to Brattleboro, 46 to Springfield.
Right. And the rolling average for Springfield is 24.52.
Say that
Would be
one more
half
time.
of a school year's worth. So basically-
24.52 students is the sixth semester
Okay.
rolling average, and you give me a minute, I'll
which
tell
essentially
you
equates
what.
to 46 students in a year.
All right.
And 3.17 at
Brattleboro.
Wyndham Regional.
Which equates
Yeah.
to about 6 students in a year. So our
Yeah.
numbers are fairly stable in most places.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you.
I haven't given you a chance to ask any questions.
I'm good right now.
All right, fine. Just want to make sure. We are coming up at 20 past the hour, and I want to start to get a sense as to whether people's feelings about what they've been presented. Is there any places people want to push back on, or do we have sort of a Quaker sense that these numbers feel roughly okay to the extent that we've got them nailed down?
I think I feel more comfortable after the WASU has had.
All right, David?
These numbers are good. I continually say school's the primary social services safety net for the 3 through 21 years of age population. We also have to teach school. Phil Scott wants a highly educated workforce. We have to pay for it.
Colin, your sense as to the numbers we've seen, is there
Little
anything
bit of-
acceptable, unacceptable that you?
I think it's good. I definitely learned a lot this evening and a better understanding of the process. So, and for the record, I was not the one that was suggesting hacking or anything. It was more of a, people come up to you in the community, they know you're on the board. They're just curious as to what, if anything. So, but I'm good. I learned a lot tonight. So
I'm going to just sort of peel around here, Don and everybody else in order.
Well, this is a part of what this is for me is an information gathering exercise. So when people in my town have questions, I can, at least answer them at some level of intelligence. Perhaps the next time we get together, I about a half dozen line items. I'm just curious what they are. And again, I raise questions. Are we, do we need to take a second look at school security? I'm not hearing that guidance is inadequate now that we have that extra position. I don't know if they're keeping ahead of the flood or not. We haven't really discussed that.
To me, it looks very much as if this budget has responded to past priorities, guidance, which is one of the bigger. It's a tiny change, but it's one of the bigger changes that are there, and that the major change is our preparation for budget negotiations. So it's basically very similar to the previous budget, and it is considered in detail. And if we go deeper into the weeds, then we get into the difficulty of looking at the girls' softball budget, which is up $4,000. Well, it's because it was down because they didn't buy uniforms, and they do buy uniforms. There's these 2-year cycles, so the budget bounces up and down. When you get to that tiny level, you have the budgets on individual departments bouncing around a lot as one or another department needs books or another team needs uniforms. And if we get too critical, I remember years past when Paul Balhowski was very focused on doing every line item.
Yeah.
And we'd run into this of having to explain why the wrestling mats are being bought this year. Wrestling mats for years of discussion about wrestling mats. This level, this broader level, is good, and this amount is very rational.
Brenda, and then your partner Cheryl. Anything at this
I
point?
think that we should always welcome questions.
Right.
I mean, I've been through these enough to know that I totally understand what you're saying, but I think that some of us that have done this for a lot,
1 year prior
we kind of know that, but then when we have new board members, it's kind of intimidating for them because they think, well, if I ask this question, I'm going to feel stupid. And so I think that we need to try to let, if Don's got 6 line items that he wants an explanation on, I think that he deserves that explanation, because I think that everybody needs to understand it. So when you do get caught on the street, like Colin said he did, he can say, this is why. Because we needed to buy uniforms this year because, they've been chewed up by the rats or whatever happened, I mean, that's the truth of the matter is.
We don't have rats. You're on TV right now. We don't have rats.
Just to be clear.
Are you sure? We have to welcome those questions so that the public can help, will understand also.
Okay. I've been through budget cycles where the board has decided we're going to find a way to level fund the budget, come what may, or even we are on a mission to take 5 to 10% out of the budget and really want to see what those numbers are like. And so my querying here is really to make sure that people are, in a broad sense, okay with what we're doing, because this is the time, because the budget cycle is getting shorter. If there is like a screaming objection to any item or the bottom line, it's now that we do it, because we're not going to have an opportunity to do it a week before we pass this thing. So I mean, that's really where I'm focused. I just want to make sure that people here have guidance as to what it is that they need to work on, as opposed to ripping the whole thing up and starting over, which I would rather not do if we could avoid it. Giving you the option to do that if you want to, by the way, but still. All right. So I think we've taken the temperature of everyone here at this point. Is there any other items that I'm missing that we should be discussing at this point? Well, in that case, we can take our whole 5 minutes for a quick to adjourn and for a break for those that need it. Thank you all.
Thanks for the 5 minutes.
Could have been 10, but.
You know, cool
Spell.
All right, everybody. I'm going to call the
Pass that down, it's Edie's.
Bellows Falls Union High School School Board
Hey, Mom, you want your...
meeting to order. It is Monday, November 26th. It is
Oh, thank you.
6:31. We're in the library. Adjustments to the agenda. Any?
I don't have any.
Okay. Review and approve a board minutes of November 12th, attached pages 1 through 8, and on your drive. I have one thing. Colin James does not hold a degree in preschool education.
Well,
And
if you get one,
he is
let us
excited
know.
to be a part of the board, but that would be my mother.
Okay, so I contributed the whole comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. No, it's okay. I kind of was reviewing it like, oh, cool. Anybody else see anything? Okay. I will declare the minutes of November 12th approved. Communication and public comment. Seeing none.
No students tonight?
Apparently not.
Apparently not.
All right. Policies. Anything?
No, we're in the process of, today I actually put it out, we're in the process of trying to get together a policy committee meeting, the SU level, because it's my understanding that it starts at the SU level and
Right.
it kind of fans out to all the different boards. So hopefully we'll be getting that date down so we can start working on some of the policies that some board members have already wanted to visit.
Yeah, we do have the ones that you gave us last
Yep,
time.
so those are the ones we look at first.
All right, very good. Reports A, Superintendent Pratt.
I've been trying to keep most of the stuff on the blog that I have, but just to give a quick review of some of the stuff that we've been looking at. Last week was, I'll just work backwards. Last week, we had a lot of different things going on at the different schools in regards to community, school celebrations around Thanksgiving. Beyond that, we know the week before that, winter is upon us. Those are always sleepless nights. You always want to make the right call. Beyond that, let's see. Of course, you know, I've been spending a lot of time on everything going on with Act 46 and the alternative governance structure. I've been trying to keep people updated in regards to my posts. I'm sure we'll talk about more later, but we did, a bunch of us did go up to the State Board of Education in Barry last week or the week before. We got exactly 32 minutes, 12 minutes longer than we should have, but we'll probably get into that a little more later on. The short of it is that as of right now, no changes have been made in regards to not accepting our alternative governance proposal, and they're still looking to merge Athens, Grafton, and Westminster.
And there's no deadline for anything that's ongoing.
Well,
correct?
they're going to make their final decision on
Right.
the 29th of November, the end of November, in regards to if there are any changes. We don't anticipate any changes to any of the alternative structures that they didn't accept. I think for the most part they're going to move forward. And so a lot of boards are looking at some different ways to maybe push back in regards to not accepting the alternative governance proposals. And in addition to that, like I said, I post. You'll see 2 reports on my blog. The first one is my report, and it kind of breaks down almost a day by day, week by week, and kind of stuff that what my job looks like on a monthly basis. And the other one is a report that includes the assistant superintendent, food services, technology, the business manager, all kind of compiled, special ed, all compiled into one report, because I feel it's very important that the boards know what's going on and in the offices in the SU. So that's a new report that you'll be getting on a monthly basis, and so I'm excited about getting that going. And as you all know, a couple weeks before we met with the State Board of Education, Secretary French did visit the Westminster School, and the Assistant Secretary Education Deputy visited Bellows Falls Union High School. So it's been a busy month. I'm sure with the weather it will continue to be. But as each month goes on, I continue to try to find ways to keep the public and the board informed in what's going on around the schools and the community. So thank you. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Chris. B, principal's report, Mr. Hodson.
So just a few things. Today, winter athletics have begun, so we've transitioned from fall sports to winter sports, and I think as we speak, the boys' basketball team is practicing in the gym. So folks are excited about that. Auditions for Mary Poppins begin on Wednesday, so that's the musical for this spring. So folks will be working hard on that. And the other thing I'll point out is when our student reps who, when they've been here, commented on the food drive that they were doing. We wrapped that up with somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 items collected through the student body going to charitable organizations in the community. It always is, well, the participation is great from the student body on those kinds of events. It particularly helps when there are winter carnival points associated with that. It's all about winter carnival. So, but that's all I've got.
Student reports, they're not here. B, business manager, financials attached, pages 9 through 36, and on your drive. Edie, do you have anything?
I really don't. I've gone through your financial report, and there's nothing that's unusual or. There were a couple things that were poured down in last month, but nothing really. It looks good. Chris is doing a good job. So, and no surprises. Otherwise, it would show up if something unusual came in that none of us expected. But no, I really don't have anything to report unless someone has questions.
Anybody have any questions for Edie?
We work hard to keep the financial things boring for you folks.
Oh, thank you.
You've succeeded admirably.
Gee, thanks.
The exciting budgets are not necessarily good budgets.
No,
As long as we're in
I
good shape.
agree.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
E, committees. Do we have any committees this evening?
No, the only thing, like I said earlier, is that we're working on getting the policy committee together so we can start looking at some of the policies that have been out there already.
Okay. Cool. All right. F, WNESU board review. Is there anything? Chairman, Mr. Clark.
Well, I will point out that we did review it the first meeting of the month. I will point out that Wednesday, all boards meeting here at the high school. Presumably Superintendent Pratt, Principal Hodgson, and Assistant Principal Broadley all got a copy of the press release from the Alliance of Vermont School Board Members, which I wrote.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I mentioned this merely because there's always the possibility that we may have some interested public here, and hopefully we can plan accordingly for that.
We'll be set up for a big board meeting, and I'll just make sure we have some additional spectator seats.
Okay.
Sorry, just because I feel moderately out of the loop. Can you explain more about this Wednesday all board meeting? Is this just a
Well, one of the principles and procedures that we adopted in our alternative governance structure proposal was that all the boards would sit down on a twice yearly basis and discuss items of mutual interest and concern. Obviously, the potential merger of Athens and Grafton with Westminster is one of those concerns, and it certainly will have impacts on Rockingham and the high school as well. So we'll be talking about that Wednesday
So
night.
this is, again, I'm feeling moderately out of the loop. Maybe I didn't read a piece of email, but this is an invite to all boards to come here.
I think one of your challenges, especially when new board members come on, if you come on just after something's been done and it's been put to bed, it doesn't get the airtime, but again, what David is saying is there was a part of the governance
Yeah, we had,
adjustment.
we had a big joint meeting here.
Right.
And that
Well,
was very
doing that twice a year
Mhm.
was what the board's committed to.
Yeah, so all the meetings have been warned.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the districts within WNSESU have been warned. So everyone will come together. They'll all separately open their meetings.
Yeah, but how has that warning gone out?
Just the typical warning that we usually do that my office.
So I got mailed this. Would I get mailed that?
I would assume
Yeah.
so, yep.
Okay. I haven't been mailed that yet.
Just to add some background, one of the things that has come up in discussions about alternative governance and the state board's view of them is that the state board has said, at least in an open meeting, that they regarded many of those proposals as by other school boards to be little more than a posturing statement, and we have that people have not essentially acted on their alternative governance proposals, have not implemented them, and essentially, and therefore, what we're trying to establish and be very clear on is that not only have we put this alternative governance proposal forward, but we are in fact acting as if we're acting under those rules already, and that may turn out to be very important for us if we are to successfully push back on some of the consolidation recommendations that we're being faced with. So our intent is to continue to act upon that that alternative governance model until such time as we're told we can't.
And the time is going to be?
The meeting?
Yes.
It'll either be the end of the month or after.
What time is the meeting?
The meeting Wednesday, right?
6
yes.
o'clock.
6
o'clock.
6 o'clock,
That's
6:30?
That's what just the joint board meeting says here for
Joint.
11/28.
Joint board meeting at 6 o'clock here.
Yep,
Okay.
everyone.
That's what it says.
All the boards are going to be meeting.
Okay.
Got a
I just,
6:15.
did everybody?
An email was sent out. I've got a
Yeah.
6. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
It did not appear on my
Fine.
email as of 4 o'clock today.
I'm wondering if
This email
the
was sent out. Sue sent this out on.
The warning
But that won't do
or,
it.
or the
sent
agenda says 6
to-
o'clock at the top.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jack,
Right. So
Charles, Jess, Jennifer, Don, Brenda, Catherine,
I
me,
get-
Stephen, Edwin.
I am
But
just
Stephen,
wanting
it says it was sent to you on
what-
Tuesday, November 20th. 2:32 p.m.
Yeah. And I guess my apologies. If I'm expecting, if I'm getting,
I'll make sure there
warnings,
are some hard copies
Yeah,
that
I
night
just-
at the meeting because if she sends it out
Yeah.
tomorrow, you
a
might
few of us
not get
sometimes
it,
ask for
so-
phone calls too. So
Yeah.
just to
do that.
clarify the 6 versus 6:15, the way it works is at 6 o'clock is when every individual board opens a meeting, and again the agenda is set up this way. At 6:15, that joint board meeting begins.
It gives time from the 6 to 6:15. It gives time for everyone to open their meetings so we can all get started at 6:15. That's why there's that delay there.
essentially there's a whole bunch of meetings happening
Here
simultaneously.
at
Yeah,
6.
no, I agree. My only concern is that everybody, including myself, know about it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
All right.
On to 7.
Unfinished business for discussion and action. A, update on FY20 budget meeting. Jack, do you want to just
Yeah,
give a quick
do it.
review for those of us?
Quick review
who are
for
not
those of us who are not. We met at 5:30, as we do. We did both a sort of a broad bottom line assessment of the budget. A number of questions were asked about some specifics. We were looking at roughly a 1%, more or less, change from where we're at to this anticipated budget. There's still some numbers to be plugged in. We had a little bit detailed discussion about some of the impacts of things such as food service, which are a bit out of our space, about the tech centers, which again are a little bit out of our space, and we did a review to find out if people were broadly comfortable with the outline such as we have it to date, and it seemed to be broad consensus that they were. There was some discussion about looking at additional security items as a possible change on that budget, and we'll see where that goes when this comes back around to us next time. And there you go.
All right. Thank you very much. Moving on. B, athletic donation program. Mr. Hudson.
So we had that on the agenda last time and sent off for us to come up with the right mechanism to both take that money in and record it and be able to spend it, which we've done. It will go
Can
into...
Can you just give us a fresher?
Sure. So what we've
course
got
of that,
is
please?
Win Ben Charities has, for the past few years, provided a donation at about this time of the year toward the sports program. They get no more detailed than that. It is your responsibility to officially accept donations and to essentially designate their use. I always strongly recommend, we can accept money and don't have to use it the way the person that's donating would like to, but I strongly encourage us to do it that way. I think that promotes more people coming up with donations. So your role in this is to make a motion to accept the $5,000 donation from Win Ben Charities for funds toward our sports program.
Now, the last time there was discussion again of sort of the right wording and the right department.
If you just do that, we know where the money's going. You don't necessarily have to.
The only reason I brought that up is because last time we were confused as to how to accept it.
Right. So all you have to do is make a motion and pass a motion to accept the $5,000 donation from Win Ben Charities for use within the sports program.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clark.
I would like to move that we accept the donation of $50,000 from...
5,000.
50,000?
Thank you. That's very generous. I move that
pass that motion.
I move that we accept the donation of $5,000.
But if anybody wants to add 45 more,
charities for use within the sports program.
All right. Is there any discussion? Done.
I may have misunderstood what the confusion was at the last meeting, but I thought the issue was having that money expended before the end of the fiscal year.
No, it was really more about where's the right place to deposit that money.
Right. And Christine did some research for me, and we can put it in a special revenue fund, and it will roll over at the end of the year. It will not get lost in the general fund.
That is what we were trying to make.
That's where the...
Yeah, that's what we're trying not to do.
Okay. So, now we know. All right, is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. All right, update on State Board Act 46, discussion for Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union. Mr. Pratt, I'm going to turn to you or Mr. Clark.
I would said my piece about that. I would defer to Jack or David.
I would defer to Jack.
All right, Mr. Breyer, it's all you.
A couple things. The State Board has... We are under the assumption. We're working on the assumption that that this decision that the State Board has made that it will intend to implement in some way, shape, or form, and this means that the state will be recommending and attempting to implement a consolidation of the Athens, Grafton, and Westminster boards. There are some issues around that that and some of them you need to know about, and you need to know about how it will impact both this board and the SU board, because it will. The first one is that that Act 46 would call for there to be a consolidation meeting of the individual town board chair and the individual town board clerk. And there are a couple issues with that. Is there is no penalty for their not attending, and they need attendance of at least half to have a quorum, and that might be a problem for them because several folks have said they do not intend to attend such a meeting. There is a secondary concern in that if the board has voted to, if the state board has voted to dissolve these entities during the period prior to people meeting, we have the issue of people that are now chairs and clerks of boards that don't exist. So it's not even clear to us whether or not they can meet, even if they wanted to. So that's a bit of a problem. It impacts this board, it impacts the SU board, because we did ask very specifically of the SU board whether or not these changes would affect governance at the SU level and at this board level. We were told specifically it would not affect membership on this board. They also said, and I don't think they understood what they were saying, that it wouldn't affect the SU board, and that's not possible because either we have the SU board, the SU is organized on the assumption that there are participating boards, as written right into our bylaws, so there is a question as to what constitutes a quorum of the SU board going forward. These are among the reasons why I'm very hopeful that a preliminary injunction by the Alliance and its constituent members will take place, because there's an awful lot of gunk here that hasn't been clarified and hasn't been thought through at all. And so we will need to get guidance on some of that, and a lot will depend on whether or not we get the Attorneys Act in a prompt way. There you are. It's kind of complicated. Don?
Your point about these chairs and clerks not being in office when they meet. Won't the state recommendations be implemented on July 1st of 2019?
The question becomes one of who's in charge here in terms of the process. Is what authority does the new board have? It's a dissolution happen as of coming up? Does the dissolution happen as of the next, as of July? Does it happen as of the March meeting? This has been a problem at other places where I know the Wyndham Central has been going through all sorts of stuff, and they merged voluntarily about, say, the role of Wyndham's town board on decisions. I think we'll still have all of those issues will be in front of us.
I'd have to go back to the law. I didn't realize that we're unclear on the dissolution date, but there are some other points. I mean, the Athens-Grafton-Westminster joint school district would not come anywhere near the 900 student count that the law recommends. The SU board representation, I don't know if it's proportional to the town's populations.
That's an issue also.
I don't see how that's going to work with the current 15 members.
Well, you also have the issue of you have a temporary board being set up on a 2-2-2 basis, which is not one man, one vote or anything like it. The point that we're trying to make is simply that we're being asked to defer budget issues to this new successor board right off and I'm not sure that we can or that we should. I just think there are a number of things that we're going to need some clarity on. I'm hoping that we're going to get some advice from attorneys on this, because it's a little bit in deep water from my perspective. I don't know enough to know what the best strategy is to go forward. My working assumption would be that the individual boards continue to work on their budgets and get one out while we resolve all this.
Well, just continuing the points, from what I understand and from what I know, there will not be, of those board chairs and clerks, there will not be enough of them who are willing to go to the board that there's any chance of it being a quorum.
Right.
So that board can't functionally meet. It's supposed to be making the budget for this coming year for those towns, or for that joint district. It's not going to happen, and yet the other town boards are prohibited from continuing to meet, so they can't finish their budget process, which does affect us. It affects us in our working together with them in an alternative governance structure. It affects us, in all our curriculum decisions at the SU level, and even how we run our SU. It looks like the imposition of this Act 46 makes our district, at least within the immediate year, ungovernable. I would consider that this would be a reasonable time for us as a board to join the lawsuit, as many other boards have, against this imposition of Act 46 on our district.
Because we can't. We're directly impacted because we can't function as to do our job if we don't have a functional SU.
Yes. So we can join that lawsuit as well, just to raise the point that this impacts the high school as well, and the whole SU. I would, if it is feasible, I would like to make the motion that we do so.
So I would suggest that that strikes me as something that is somewhat departing from update on State Board Act 46 decisions. So if that's something that...
It's under discussion and action.
I'm just throwing out there that I think that might be something to warn as an action for a future meeting.
I think so.
As opposed to acting under update for, again, transparency in what happens at board meetings.
And there's going to be an NWNESU meeting about this on Wednesday, so that it'll be discussed further there as well. It may become either moot or just something
worthy of putting on the agenda.
Or worthy of putting on the agenda.
I'm gonna agree with Mr. Hodson, but I am gonna move on from this subject if there's anything further to discuss, because this can be a very lengthy. There's a lot of information here. But
just letting you know the size of the circus that's coming.
Absolutely.
And a request to put it on the next.
Yep, that's fine.
For
we can
an
do
action.
that. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jack, and keep up the good work. You're very valuable in that area.
Oh, we'll see what the value looks like after we're all thrown in jail, but nonetheless.
I heard there's decent meals, but anyway. Scheduled department presentations. I believe, Mr. Hodson, we've discussed for December 10th.
Right. I talked with Mr. Pratt on that, and because we're still deep into budget, we were going to defer that to start on January 14th with English.
Okay.
February 11th, science. March 11th, social studies, and I will get this out all to you in writing, and it's going in the minutes as well.
Okay.
April 8th, math. May 13th, foreign language, and one other we could, if we wanted a June one, although June gets busy, could be the music and art folks.
So we could combine that.
Well, that's what I would do. I would combine the two of them.
Right.
If we felt like, a presentation in June made sense. So that's what we're going to go with.
All right. Cool. Awesome. Thank you for doing that. 8, new business for discussion and action. A, retirement incentive, attached on pages 37 and 39. It's on your drive as well. Who would like to take the lead on this one? Mr. Pratt?
That's something that's my understanding. It's been past practice quite some time now that offering an early decision incentive to other teachers who may be retiring, that $2,000 incentive, for the purposes of it allows, to my understanding, for boards to budget, make a better, build a better budget, knowing if you have teachers retiring and knowing what we have to work with filling that position. What I can tell you is that the Rockingham board tweaked it a little bit in regards to, instead of a 10-year incentive, they went to 5-year, and also made it retroactive. So they changed the verbiage a little bit in the current letter. So that's my understanding of the early incentive for retirement. If anyone else wants to add to that,
Well,
it's new to me. So
Yeah, so I would recommend, and I, not having been part of the Rockingham discussion on that, I think the letter that Chris put into the document keeps it both simple and reasonable, and keep aligned with our past practice, which again simply would be, I think, a motion from the board to support offering a $2,000 incentive for individuals who report out their intention to retire. That is, as per the document, submit
Irrevocable.
a letter that you can't take back,
Irrevocable, I believe is the word we're looking for.
effective July 1st, 2019. So,
And to that point, and to continue the discussion, I will make that motion. I think this is the right time to do that.
Okay.
And speaking to it, I would say that we did this at the Athens Grafton board as well, and already passed this. It's common. It's been our common practice for a long time to do it. We've debated whether or not the number was too low or too high, but I think that we should probably adhere to what the other boards have done, or at least 2 of them, 3 of them.
We've done this in the past.
yeah, we've done it
Yeah,
many
right,
years
yeah,
actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the retirement incentive, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Motion carries. 9 appointments, if any. None. Okay. Director's comments. Start with you, Molly. Brenda.
None.
Stephen.
No.
Don.
Nothing tonight.
Chris.
There are just some words you read all the time but never have to say out loud.
Mr. Bradley. Nice to see you.
No, I'm good.
You good? Yeah. All right. Mr. Pratt.
no, just been thanking all the boards for me. I feel I'm still in the beginning of it, and enjoyed working with all the boards so far, and I appreciate the ongoing communication with everyone. And I'm just here.
I just have one thing. I want to introduce my mother again, Catherine James. She decided to step up to be the Rockingham rep. She officially signed her document today, so she is officially on board, and we're glad to have her. I appreciate her stepping up to that. Edie, anything?
No, I'm good.
Jack?
Just want to say thank you to everyone, and hope that everyone's patience about your 3 small towns trying to establish and maintain their democratic accountability, and realizing that there's backwash both at the SU and at this board's level, and I'll continue to ask your forbearance as we see this process through.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Mr. Clark?
I think possibly the last meeting, Mr. Chairman, I may have mentioned that in my years of service on this board, I've had the opportunity to serve both with father and son from the town of Athens and mother and daughter from the town of Grafton, not at the same time. So I just think it's really wonderful to be sitting at the table with mother and son from the same town at the same time. It makes me just feel really good. I do want to very briefly speak to the chaos which a forced merger I think will unleash within the Wyndham Northwest Supervisory Union District schools, because as a first-hand observer of the process by which the State Board of Education made its decisions, it was clear to me they didn't have a clue as to what life is really like, and I think, if nothing else, it would undo a number of years of great progress toward delivering a better education to all kids within the district. I believe that these mergers will be stopped before they do damage. However, there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting ahead in order to make sure that that does happen.
All right, thank you. Catherine, you have anything?
I'm just glad to be here and glad to serve, and I went to the school myself, so I'm happy to serve. I was always at the other end, the preschool end, so now I'm glad to be at the high school end. So
Good.
and I'm proud of my son. So
Hey, moving on.
That noted.
that in there. I had to put that
Deb.
Only that we are stepping off into unknown waters with the Act 46 issues, and I hope that we all have the steel to stick to this, knowing that what we want to accomplish is in the best interest of all of our students and our communities. And with the water idea, it's be careful out there. It's going to continue raining all night, most likely icy, glassy temperatures in the morning. Many of you have an early commute. That's it.
Sand budget's up to
Yeah.
date.
Okay. Agenda items for the next board meeting.
Is
There
that really
was
the
the
time?
ongoing discussion for the Act 46.
Yeah, we'll know a lot
And
more.
then Chris and I will go over. Date of next board meeting is set for December. Oh, I'm sorry, Molly. I'm sorry. Yes.
I have some seniors that would like to be put on the agenda for next month's meeting.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. Next date of next board meeting is set for December 10th here at the school.
Or actually, aren't we officially meeting as a board
Yeah,
Wednesday?
yes, we are.
And then
Correct.
so-
Yes,
So
but
that should say
next
that-
high school board meeting.
But the next high
Officially,
school
the
board
high school
meeting
board
will be
opens
on
on Wednesday.
the
Wednesday.
28th.
Okay, just going with what the agenda says here. So, all right. So the next board meeting will be Wednesday,
November
28th.
28th here at
Yep.
the high school. All right. Anything further? Okay. I will declare us adjourned at 7:10. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, that was lickety.